Matigani is the Intamin hydraulic launch coaster located at Lost Island in Waterloo, Iowa. It just opened for the 2023 season, but actually it had a home prior to Lost Island. Many of you might be familiar with Liseberg, located in Gothenburg, Sweden. In 2005, they opened the ride Kanonen. It operated for 11 years towards the front of the park, was definitely a well-loved coaster, but it closed towards the end of 2016 so that they could make way for Valkyria, a B&M dive coaster. When I went to Liseberg, unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to ride Kanonen. I went after it closed, so this was my first time experiencing the attraction, and let me tell you, it looks great and was a lot of fun. So in this review, I'm going to tell you all about that ride experience so you can know what to expect when you go out to Lost Island and check it out. So first things first, when you enter Lost Island, this is going to be off to the left-hand side. It's in the Utah section of the park, which has this very earthy vibe, hence the completely green color scheme. It actually looks really nice in person. Lost Island as a whole is very well themed, but Matigani has a very loose theme. I do like the look of the front of these trains though, that snakehead. And speaking of the trains, you might notice the soft padded over the shoulder restraints. That is a change from Matigani versus Kanonen. Kanonen used to have those hard shell over the shoulder restraints that like you now still see on King Ka. This is more in line with what you got on like Maverick and i35 Stormrunner. So it definitely helps with some of the transitions because Matigani will throw you a little bit side to side. It's not an overly aggressive ride. This is still 2006 Intamin that we're talking about. Their coasters just weren't as whippy back then as they are now. It's instances like this ride where you can really see how far the company has come. Matigani is perfect for Lost Island because it is not overly intense. Honestly, I think just about anyone could enjoy this ride. It would introduce kids to launches as well as going upside down, and it's enough that the enthusiasts are going to want to do it over and over again. And Lost Island has not been particularly busy, so it should be pretty easy to get more than one ride on this thing, so be sure to check it out in the front row as well as the back. And Matigani shoots you out right out of the station. And this first launch is fun. It'll take you up to 47 miles per hour in 2 seconds. It's a pretty quick acceleration. Like you can literally see right here where the launch stops, it has some extra feet of straight track before you then rise up into your top hat. And this is probably the first design change that I would have made with this coaster, and that is I would have brought the top hat forward a bit. Because you can feel when that launch lets up, and there's a gap there before you rise up into your top hat. And you can definitely see how Intamin has perfected that with some of their newer coasters. As soon as the launch lets up, you just go straight up. So this just has that brief second of downtime while you're waiting for something to happen. Now as you rise up into this 79-foot tall peak, you're going to get some pretty good air. In the front, you'll lift up out of your seat rising into the top hat. When you're in the back, you get some airtime going over. And this is a twisted drop. RCDB lists the angle of descent here at 90 degrees. Let me tell you, it certainly didn't feel that way when you're actually on the coaster. This is such a small little top hat. It's not very intimidating when you're at the peak. Like you don't feel that high up. You'll hit this little airtime hump, and that's actually a great moment of airtime. I like it because not only are you getting ejected out of your seat, but you're also banking a little bit to the left. It's part of this twist, so it's one swooping motion. That's what immediately sends you into your vertical loop. So this is inversion number 1 on Matigani. You stall out there just a little bit going through that loop. You'll see it's very circular. Most vertical loops that you see these days take an oval shape. So that does mean that you get a little bit more hang time here, but not as much hang time as you get on the second inversion. We'll get to that later. Following this maneuver, you bank to the right and then swiftly change directions. Now you're going to the left, right up against the ground. It's a moment that absolutely has some whip to it. You twist pretty sharply to one side. I think up until this point, you have a very solid sequence of elements. It's after this where the ride is just like kind of fine. So as you're banking to the left, you'll go right up against the station. You'll rise up into a little airtime hill. You enter this hill at a very gradual angle and then likewise just slowly descent downwards. It's like barely even a peak there. And honestly, I think the only reason that this moment is here is because it has to get to the other side in order to go around this inversion. So you'll see the track just barely passes over it. I'd say this turn that follows is probably the weakest part of the ride. It's just kind of slow. It doesn't feel like it has a whole lot of purpose to it. You can tell it's very much there to get you from point A to point B. But luckily, that point B that you arrive at is pretty good. This is a slow-moving inline twist into the brake run, and it has some good hang time to it. Honestly, it felt like a JoJo roll that you normally get at the beginning of a roller coaster like Copperhead Strike or a Hydra at Dorney Park. But this is at the end of the ride. But you don't have a ton of speed going into it. You can tell the ride's fizzling out, and you just slowly dangle through this thing. Not as much as a JoJo roll, but it's definitely a similar sensation. And that's the end of Matigani. It is a short ride experience, but it's good for what it is. It's nothing mind-blowing, but I really do like it in this park. It looks really nice in the area, and it gives this park a major attraction. I know a lot of people would consider this the best ride in the park. As far as I'm concerned, it's either this or Volcanoe. And it's just up to preference at that point, you know, dark ride versus roller coaster. But I think if I had to compare this to any other ride that I've experienced, this one's a bit more niche, but if you've ridden Speed Monster over in Norway at Tusenfryd, that's another Intamin hydraulic launch coaster that I would describe as like family thrill. I feel like this is a bit more intense, but it felt very similar in how it takes its maneuvers. Out of other US rides, I mean, I'd say maybe like a smaller version of Storm Runner. Storm Runner is definitely more intense, and I think it has more whip to it, especially towards the end of the ride. So maybe this is like Storm Runner's younger brother. So for a final score, I'm giving Matigani a very solid 7 out of 10. It's absolutely enjoyable for what it is. I don't have any like real complaints with it, you know? Any criticisms that I brought up in this video are real minute. They're just things that if you tightened up would make the coaster feel like non-stop. You know, relentless from start to finish. For the most part, the coaster has good pacing. Honestly, it's really just that last turn leading into the final inversion. But even then, it's not that bad. It's a fun coaster. I liked it enough that I did it probably like 5 times, maybe 6. I'd say in the state of Iowa, it's probably the second best roller coaster behind Monster at Adventureland. So let me know down in the comments below if you've experienced Matigani or if you rode Kanonen at Liseberg, what you thought of it, if you agreed with the points that I brought up, and of course stay tuned for more roller coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.